But Kesha basically wanted to get out of a contract back in 2014. She had a multi-year contract, a multi-album contract with her record company, wanted out. This coincided with allegations that she made that Dr. Luke drugged and R-worded her, for lack of a better word. We're going to keep it as PG as possible here. That he drugged and R-worded her back in 2005. He sued her for defamation, saying you can't just say stuff like that without, you can't, if you can't prove it, you can't go and say stuff like that. He won the defamation suit and then won the appeal. And then there was another court just last year that said he's a public figure. You have to prove actual malice. Sued her. Now they've settled out of court. But what it says to me is like, look, her statement says everything to me about this, and this is what her quote says. She says, "Only God knows what happened that night," wrote Kesha. "As I always said, I cannot recount everything that happened. I am looking forward to closing this door on this chapter of my life and beginning a new one. I wish nothing but peace to all parties involved." And then what he said is like, well, I know exactly what happened that night, and I didn't do that. But
up until that moment, you kind of declared what had happened. It wasn't, you weren't ambiguous about what happened.
You didn't say I might have something bad might have happened to me that night. There's a very large discussion that can be had about the fact that there doesn't seem to be any gravity attached to these types of claims anymore. You can make them with almost no fear of repercussion. The consequences to your actions are minuscule compared to the consequences for the person you're accusing if they didn't actually do what you're saying. And the thing that scared me about it is that it's attached to business dealings, meaning it's attached to, I want out of a contract, and then suddenly these allegations come out, and you realize that everyone, men and women in these industries, are interested in themselves. They're looking to forward an agenda, whether it's their political agenda, whether it's their social agenda, whether it's their business agenda. And it makes me worry because she's not going to face any repercussions for this. They settle out of court. If this didn't happen, he's kind of doing everyone else a disservice by settling, because I feel like we need to actually push back. If these things didn't happen to you, people need to actually be held accountable for just making statements that have that have a large bearing on someone's future and ability to make money, have a family, have kids that can look up to them if that didn't happen. Like, imagine you've got children who then have to read headlines where these things are attached to your name forever. And it feels like these allegations are thrown around very haphazardly now.
They didn't have this on television, did they? This court proceedings at all? So nope. I think there was some accountability, I think, with Amber Heard, though, because I think people did see.
But there was proof. There was literally, it required the public to have video evidence of her saying, basically telling him that he was a baby and that I didn't punch you, I hit you. It's different. If there hadn't been the actual evidence of her being
when they
so
were recording
awful,
each other, it was incredible.
Like if there hadn't been the actual evidence of her being as awful as she was, I don't know if they would have gotten the outcome that we got.
The allegation ruins lives. The revelations don't. Yeah. And that's a problem. If you look at the Duke LaCrosse case,
that was exactly the one I was thinking of.
Got screwed. Who was the accuser again? What happened? Nothing really happened to her. I don't even think she was. I don't even think she was charged with filing a false police report. If I remember properly,
I don't think she was. Also, the
woman with
fraternity,
Rolling Stone.
I was going to say the UVA case against the fraternity where
made it up completely.
She wasn't real. She didn't even go to that school. She's not even connected at all.
For a long time, they protected her name after it was known as BS. And a lot of times, if the allegations are, if somebody's found innocent, I'm all for protecting the victims. If it's a horrible thing and you don't want the world to know, I understand that. But if then the wheels fall off the case and you are not the victim, we should know who you are. Yeah. We should, because we know who you accused, and they've already faced repercussions, and those. Their first Google results for the rest of their lives will be the allegation, not the exoneration. You got to go to like page 3 for that.
It's why the media is so the media can so easily manipulate people, right? Because they can make a false statement knowing it's false, knowing that when they issue the retraction, nobody sees the retraction. Nobody cares about
That's why oftentimes they'll let stories sit out there for 2 or 3 days, because they know that most people won't read past the headline. And those who do won't go back and say, gee, I wonder if that story was updated. And they won't see the correction on page A24 in small print that you need a jeweler's loop to read. So the media can say, we corrected the record, we did, and they did technically, but they let the lie sit long enough that it started to harden.
Yep. And that's one of the biggest dangers we have in the news cycle that's not even 24 hours anymore. It's a continuous news cycle that never ends, right? And it wasn't the Duke case, but one of the other ones, one of the ladies who did this got convicted, got like a year in prison and rolled her eyes at the judge. It's just like we've created a society where allegations are enough to ruin someone's life. And if you're a professional, you know, it's not Dr. Luke I'm worried about. It's the dude who works a regular job who gets accused of this and ends up in the paper. Yeah. And he doesn't have millions of dollars to file a defamation suit against the person who accused him, or she. This could, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen as often going the other way, but theoretically that could happen, right? Like somebody could have said Johnny Depp was maybe making it up. We now know that wasn't the case, but you have to ask the question. The media is hungry for the initial story. The media wants the one that's going to draw the most outrage from the public. And all that happens is you destroy the fabric of relationships between men and women for the sake of a couple of sales.
Let me hop everybody back in the Wayback Machine to a crazy time called 2017. The fashion was different. Attitudes were different. The president was different. There was a conglomeration of media outlets from NPR to the New York Times, et cetera, led by the Southern Poverty Law Center that decided that since Trump was president, there was going to be an uptick in hate crimes. And so they put together this concern, this clearinghouse, to gather all the hate crime allegations in one place, this repository where the stories would be linked to show that Donald Trump's presidency led directly to this. Weirdly, the stories were centered in New York, California, in these liberal enclaves. Like suddenly the hate in these left-wing enclaves went out of control. But if you went through, and I wrote about this in my book, if you go through and look at the stories now, they stopped. They discontinued it after about 6 months. Why? Because about 80% of the stories ended up being false. The Muslim girl who was riding the train in New York, who was attacked because she was wearing a hijab by Trump supporters, the two Trump supporters, they probably went from beating up Jussie Smollett to harassing her. And it turns out, no, really, a couple days later, she admitted she was with her boyfriend. She wasn't allowed to have a boyfriend, so she was looking for a reason to explain why she was late. The guy in Silver Spring, Maryland, who was the organist for the church, and they found gay slurs spray painted on the side of the church, and it was outrageous. He was gay, and it was obviously an attack on him. And then they found the cans of paint in the trunk of his car. Like, well, I was just trying to raise awareness of it. We have a society where they indoctrinate kids through education to know that we are fundamentally, to the core, whatever, racists, some sort of Easterphobe or both. And they go out into the world going, I'm going to combat these things. I will fight them. The injustice, and they can't find it, but they know it's there because they've been told by people in authority that it's there. So then they create it. They create it to find it, to draw attention to it, and they feel completely justified. Well, the splash story gets the headlines, and then the resolution a week later or 2 weeks later, when they finally find the surveillance footage or the guy cracks under police investigation, doesn't get reported, doesn't get the nightly news because it's not nearly as important, it's not nearly as romantic. And they don't, the Southern Poverty Law Center in their hate crime statistics don't go back and pull out, oh, well, this one turned out to be a hoax.
No,
because it's like throwing an ingredient into a stew. They don't know, we can't pull that dash of salt out. We'll just leave it in there. And it cooks the books. It creates a false narrative. And that narrative is useful to one political side of the aisle. And so it perpetuates. And the only people who get hurt are real people. So what the hell do these people care?
Also, ever notice whenever they draw their swastika, they always
do it backwards.
They always draw.
I have dyslexia. I'm offended on behalf of everybody.
They never,
with dyslexia.
it's like they're trying to fake the hate crime. They can't even fake the hate crime, right?
I know.
Like
they misspell their words and stuff too. Like, well, that's a testament to poor education.
One of my favorite memes is this. Have you ever seen the videos of the guy who like draws stuff with he does window washing and he draws like logos in the window washing and he makes it looks like he's starting to make a swastika and it becomes the Bluetooth logo. And it's like, so people made all these reaction videos like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
You're making me
what
nervous.
Are you doing? And then he make Chris like, oh, thank God. So this is what Dr. Luke says. He says, while I appreciate Kesha again acknowledging that she cannot recount what happened that night in 2005, I am absolutely certain that nothing happened. I never drugged or assaulted her and would never do that to anyone. For the sake of my family, I have vigorously fought to clear my name for nearly 10 years. It is time for me to put this difficult matter behind me and move on with my life. I wish Kesha well. Well, the problem is moving on might work for you when you're already a very successful person who's worked himself into an industry where you've got clout built up.
Well, he's also settled. He's not going to say, this lying piece of garbage.
And I hated you, and I always hated you.
Here's our agreement. Let me rip it up. No, he settled. He won enough court cases that I think he feels confident in that. And the only reason to keep going is to damage her. And at some point, it's better to just let go once you feel vindicated, I think.
But it just
and stop spending money on the attorneys. I mean, this is costing him a lot of money, and he's already won 2 or 3 times, it sounds like. And her response is, well, I can't really remember, which is
I don't know.
Not holding up.
I know I
court.
accuse this guy of something horrible, but it might not have been him. I don't know. I wasn't even in
Who's to
town.
say what happened? And this guy's like, me, it did not.
Anything could happen.
He's like, I know what happened and what didn't happen because I was apparently there, and I'm telling you that it didn't happen. Right?
I'm pretty sure if you thought even a little bit that the guy drugged and raped you, you wouldn't say, but I wish him well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what happened, but I wish him well. Good luck to him.
I like to think in this society that we defend the victims and try to make sure that they get justice, but it seems like we've also become ashamed.
In this case, who's the victim?
Well, yeah, and in a shameless world where somebody could accuse somebody when they know full well it's not true. It's scary that it puts everyone in a position to actually have to figure out who the victim is.
Being this long ago is a lot like a lot of the climate change arguments. They used to make 10-year predictions, and then so many windows of 10 years passed, and the doom and gloom didn't happen. So then now they make 100-year predictions. If you notice that in the data, that's what it is. 20 years from now, 100 years from now, things are going to be horrible. And you go, wait, you can't prove that. But they know that, but they also know that you can't disprove it.
Yeah.
And so it's just them trying to scare people, and it works on some people, but it can't be disproven, and that's the thing. This charge can't be disproven, so you can't countersue Kesha really or pursue it to a certain point because you're going to say, well, you can't disprove it.
Mm-hmm. It's always like just far enough in the future that it sounds scary, but so far enough away that you won't remember it. It's like now they catch them. Now, like whenever people tweet something about it, somebody highlights the tweet and saves it. There was like Greta Thunberg had one that was like 5 years
and
from
then
now.
She deleted it.
It's like I love it. I love when they make the predictions. Like
internet never forgets.
No, it doesn't.
It's adorable.
It speaks to, I think, the lack of awareness people have for their actions, that you could be that callous about something that serious. It speaks to a culture that I think forgives people for making claims like this because we've decided that like the specter of misogyny, the specter of sexism in these industries is so vast and so overshadowing of everything else that it's okay to make a false claim every once in a while as long as you're fighting the good fight against the evil patriarchy that is these entertainment industries. The problem is there actually is a lot of evil going on in these industries. Harvey Weinstein was a Band-Aid on a problem that was far worse. There are infinitely more people in the industry that are not being taken to task, and now the reputation for these movements have been damaged forever by the false claims. Nobody will take them seriously in the way that they did when all of this stuff first came to light, because there have been so many things that have been, if not provably false, provably provably ambiguous, not easy enough to prove. So what do?
It's the boy who cried wolf. Yeah. Racism still exists. There are examples of racism. They're drowned out because if you put on MSNBC right now, I guarantee you somebody's crying racism about some tweet from Trump or something Ron DeSantis said or Kevin McCarthy did.
It would be a truth from Trump.
Somebody picked their nose and their hand indicated white power or something like that. It drowns out everything. You know, if you really care about the issue, you would be disgusted by its abuse.
Did you ever see these
people weaponize it for a reason?
The story about remember when the OK hand symbol became the 4chan meme?
White power.
And the poor like he was like an electrician who was like throwing something out of his car
he was like
and like
a booger
lost his job because somebody took a picture of it and called the first time someone's actually called the number on the back of the truck that says like, how's my driving? And somebody called him and reported him. It's like, that is the definition of moral panic.
He said he was cracking his knuckles.
Yeah.
So he was like
this
outside the window.
Yeah.
And he got fired.
He was also Hispanic, so that makes it hard to be a white supremacist.
White Hispanic, let's be honest. We read the New York Times. We know that Hispanics are just white supremacists who like tacos.
So I see this stuff and I just wonder, like, yeah, they might be able to put it behind them. Kesha's still going to have a movie career. This guy's still going to have his producing career. But how many people, like a lot of actual victims in Hollywood, I'm not even just talking about the normal people, a lot of actual victims in Hollywood will have a lot harder time coming forward now because people don't care.
There are people who will defend Chris Brown to this. You put out a tweet about, hey, Chris Brown shouldn't beat the crap out of women. And I go, how dare you? Have you seen the man dancing? Like, yeah, okay, I get it. He can
That was
sing,
a
he can
long
dance.
time ago. How dare
The
you?
guy can moonwalk.
Dude
Are you
beat
kidding
the hell
me?
out of Rihanna. You know, he kind of did do that. It's a bit of a problem.
She has since forgiven him. So maybe like you're supposed to at a certain point forgive for something like that.
Right.
But he also has an
Do
iron.
we have to forget though?
No, you do not have to forget. But he also has an ironclad way of getting through that. He just doesn't care.
Right, I know.
He just does it. Like, it's actually kind of shocking how little he cares. He doesn't
But
address
that
it.
woman who said, the liberal PR woman who said, I'm going to South Africa, hope I don't get AIDS, just kidding, I'm white or whatever, to her 17 followers because nobody knew who she was. And 6 hours later, she's the biggest news in the world and is fired and her life is ruined. She can't just go, hey, I was joking. She didn't punch Rihanna in the face.
Nope. Nope, and it's always unequal, and nothing is ever actually. I guess it's kind of silly to think that there's some type of fair system because it's not really something that can be. It's so arbitrary.
I wonder how much their fandom overwhelms their sense of logic and reasoning. Because I mean, even like with Michael Jackson, I love his music, and I was even showing my kids Thriller the other day. But then on the other hand, a part of me goes,
But you don't take him to the set. That's the difference.
But the thing is, I just, as a fan, I mean,
Actually, the girls would be safe.
You learn to separate art from you have to.
So you do kind of go, I don't know what's true. And so I think maybe even with fans of Kesha.
I don't know. You don't write a $20 million check because you're annoyed that somebody tells that you molested a child. There's certain lines like, hey, you know what? We had a business deal go aside. You might go, you know what? It'll cost me more than it's worth to fight. But you're touching kids. I think you go to the mattresses on that one. I think you do. You mortgage Neverland, and you go, let's not $20 million nuisance suit. Yeah, you're worth $1 billion, but this isn't you pushed me down a flight of stairs. This isn't you stole my car or you.
Wait, isn't pushing someone down a flight of stairs worse? Isn't that technically attempted murder?
Maybe. It depends on who it is and which stairs. If they're like curly stairs, they didn't make it.
Okay.
If Taylor Swift or Beyonce did something morally repugnant, how much would their fans, even if it was on tape, how much would they go, yeah, that was wrong?
Taylor Swift.
Some of the guys she's dated are morally repugnant.
Yeah, there you go.
But what we've talked about a lot recently is like, look, we've just come to an age now where, because you'll never actually know, you just kind of, back in the day, there was a facade amongst these industries where these companies, these production companies, worked very hard to keep a clean image about their celebrities because it allowed the people who consume their content to feel confident in the fact that they were watching something with a person who, at the very least, shared their values.
LA Confidential is like that.
Exactly.
Rock Hudson was married not because he wanted to be, but because the studio said, dude, come on.
Now what we see is that people have just accepted that that's not the real world. A lot of these people are awful. And I think as a society, the desire to be entertained has not gone away. So we've learned to just accept it. We've rationalized. We're like, yeah, he's kind of awful, but by gosh, is that guy entertaining?
It goes back to what I said at the beginning. We've obliterated the line between famous and infamous.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. You didn't want to be infamous at one point. You wanted to be famous, but be infamous was you did something horrible. Now it's, I've got attention. It doesn't matter how I've got the attention. I've got the attention. It's the ends now. It wasn't an ends before. It was a means before. Now it's just an end.
Yeah, I just, I don't know what, because there's a lot of I follow Andrew Tate. I find the guy absolutely hilarious on Twitter. Is the guy guilty of human trafficking? No idea. Not a clue, but how could I know, right? You can't know. You can't know, really. So it's like, all I do is consume the content, and the same thing with the movies you watch. Most of these movies are made by people who are probably 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon away from somebody who's done something really, really awful to another person. You eventually just kind of disassociate because you're like, look, nobody's like, we're never going to be able to watch something where something horrible wasn't done. Like, none of these Hollywood productions, there isn't one clean cast. If we're talking crew,
it's the same
producers.
thing as a conservative. Yeah. There are people like, I won't watch that. There's a liberal in it. Like, well, then you're just watching 2 crappy movies. A Christmas Carol or whatever that was that they tried to make that was supposedly funny with Chris Farley's brother, and it was like, it's terrible. It's a cinematic abortion. Get rid of it. I want to be entertained, and I get it. I'm not going to pal around with Leo on his yacht anytime soon. But
I will if he wants to invite me.
I'll go.
I'm coming.
I'll go. I got a couple of unread emails so far, so I'm not really sure what he's asked me yet. But I didn't think it was about that. But, you know, in general, I'm not going to agree with them politically. I don't need to agree with them politically. I need them to entertain me for an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah.
And that's all I ask. I don't want them to beat me over the head with their message, and I'm not going to beat them over the head with mine. But I'm not going to remove myself from the popular culture and go, I don't watch TV anymore. I don't listen to this, that, or the other thing, because then you've ceded the ground. If you don't have to like what's going on in pop culture, but you damn well better be aware of it, because it's coming after you whether you like it or not.
Yeah, that's we were talking about how I watched all the Jack Ryan movies. I liked the first season of the TV show, and they point out that Tom Clancy was a conservative Republican, but everybody that's ever played Jack Ryan has been a liberal in some fashion or another, most of them, right? So what do? Like, you just accept that you at the very least can live in a live and let live culture where it's like, look, I don't have to agree with these people. If I have to review these movies and watch these shows, like, you just learn to watch it and hope that it's good. I don't also get hung up on what they say on Twitter, because that's also not real life. A lot of people could use that as like, yes.
And it's their PR people tweeting it.
Yes, a lot of the time. Like what's going on with Samuel L. Jackson. He's promoting Secret Invasion right now while saying he's like, Trump supporters are evil and this and that. I'm like, was it 2018 again? Did he get did the blip happen and he got returned to 2018? Like, is that even relevant anymore? He hasn't been president for 3 years.
Have you watched all 3 seasons of Jack Ryan so far?
Only the first 2.
My friend Gary got paid to let them use his apartment as Jack Ryan's apartment in season 3. He tells me this, and he's got a picture of him and John Krasinski. And so I watched it, and I'm like, okay, wait, nothing happens anywhere near his apartment in every episode till the very end, and he's standing at a dresser putting on a watch in an nondescript bedroom that could have been anywhere in the world. And I'm like,
do it on a
But it was
set?
your friend Gary's.
that was it. They probably filmed more, because he told me something about him jumping over a railing or something like that. But they didn't use it, at least not yet. But I'm like, you got paid for 3 days of him putting on a watch? What the hell?
You'd think that that's something they would just do on set. Like, they would just
just go to an IKEA and frame it right. And you got
I
it.
just love the sequence at the beginning of Jack Ryan where he's going the longest 3-hour
Rides past
route to get to work.
Every landmark in the world to go ride his bike to CIA headquarters. Like
working in DC, I'm like, okay, so
And he doesn't
Georgetown's way
sweat
over
it all.
there.
He doesn't sweat it all in
he's
DC
over
in the summer.
in Langley over here. He's rowing. That is. Whoa! I mean, he's had a full day
His
before
legs
he's going
must
to
be
work.
in great shape.
he got to work just in time to go home.
He also rowed, he was on the college rowing team, which is the most elitist. As he might have well said he played polo. Just tell us he has no friends of lower income brackets. Why don't you?
He's fancy.
He's very fancy.
Well, he's a mid-level government bureaucrat, and he's got a really nice apartment. He's doing all right.
He's on the take
he
somewhere.
Comes from money, and he's got senators basically throwing their daughters at him or whatever it was. So
I love it.
He's a pinky out set. He drinks with his pinky out.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.